Hello YouTube and welcome back to the channel. So today's video is going to be concentrating again on my fuel intake point, on the depot fuel intake point. Originally I had my two Bachmann tanks in there which were good. I think they were the Bachmann Syncraft ones, or they were the Bachmann Syncraft ones. But I was sort of like, I put a lot of time and effort into trying to sort of make that look as it does. And I was looking for perhaps something a little bit better. And then I see that Goodwood Scenics were actually offering the tank you see in the background. They do that one there, which has got the steps that wrap round it, or they do another one where the steps sort of go up, or there's a ladder that goes up vertically. And that's like a greeny colour. Not to say you can't change the colours of them, of course, but that's sort of as they sell them. I think at the time when I bought that one, it was about £75. Which is, you know, you might think that's quite a lot of money for that, but there's quite a nice lot of engineering gone into that tank, and it does make sort of quite a statement, as you can see with the TEA. It is quite a big tank. So this is the one I've opted to use in there. Originally I did buy one of each of them. I bought the green one as well, but there was no way in a million years that I was going to get both of them in there. That would have just been ridiculous. I know all the sizes and bits and pieces were sort of, you know, before you buy them, all the dimensions are there, but I didn't bother measuring up. I just thought, yeah, the two Bachmann ones go in there, so I'm sure these two will, but clearly and obviously they don't. So that comes pre-weathered, pre-coloured. Now, whilst that probably don't look too bad, I'm sure that I can actually do something better with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lighten it up a little bit, and then I'm going to add some more weathering to it and bits and pieces, sort of like some oil streaks or rust streaks I should say, underneath where the steps are and stuff like that, and just try and make them sort of look a little bit more in keeping with what the rest of that dirty grimy place down there looks like. So that's kind of it before I've touched it, or that's kind of the tanks as they come. All I've done with that, I just gave it one coat of clear lacquer, so effectively, as you see there, is the one that you get supplied with in the form of a weathered tank. So let's see what mess I can make of this. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a coat of the Dove Grey. I'm not going to totally and completely respray it. What I'm just going to do is I'm just going to sort of go over it, just to sort of maybe just sort of bring out a few highlights here and there. Yeah, I'm not looking at totally respraying it, but just to brighten it up here and there. We'll see how that comes out. And if I just sort of slowly walk around, you can see how the steps sort of wrap around the tank and go up to the top. So this is sort of part two of the Goodwood tank, taking it from sort of what it was, how it arrived, to how it is now. So the plan was, I was just originally going to just sort of give it a light dusting of the grey, and then just sort of light weather it and video it all. Due to one thing or another, that never happened quite like that. I suppose I've spent probably about the last sort of week and a half or so on re-weathering this, but the problem is that I was kind of just picking it up in between bits and pieces, and sort of, you know, maybe 20 minutes on it or 15 minutes on it. So sort of trying to video that would have been almost impossible. I got on with it, and then it sort of suddenly caught up with me that it was kind of at the state it's at now, and I hadn't really videoed any of it, which was a bit of a shame really, because I'd like to, you know, it's good to sort of try and share the methods. I ended up giving it sort of like a fairly good coat of that chalk white. So that was the initial coat. So I took it from how it arrived with me to that. I then gave it a couple of light coats of sort of like a spray varnish lacquer stuff to sort of seal it all in. And then on the top, I started looking at some pictures and bits and pieces of them, and I discovered that some of them on the top, where they get sort of sun, they go like a yellowy colour. And the pictures that I'd seen were sort of like, most of them were on Flickr, and it had been sort of like where they were near the airports. So as the aeroplane was taking off, like people were sort of photographing sort of top down, because other than that you sort of struggle to get a picture of the sort of top of them. And I also discovered that there was no real rhyme nor reason to sort of, some were really clean and some were like really dirty. I think it also depends on their location. So if they're sort of like on the dock side, so as sort of like the fuel comes in sort of on tanker ships if you like, and then gets transported out via land, then the sea air obviously affects them more than it does if they're inland. And it also depends on how much they get looked after. Sort of trying to get a balance of weathering was quite difficult. Quite like the idea of the yellow top done. That's all done with like my chalk pastel colours. There's there's probably about 15 different shades in there, judging from sort of like almost like a real sort of like yellowy lemon colour through to sort of like a real dark sort of brown colour, and everything sort of in between. Just what I was trying to do was sort of just like build the shades up or the hues up, sort of like to sort of give it sort of more of a warm colour, which is one of the things I really love about using the pastels, is that there's such a range of colours that you can actually do that. Weathering powders is okay. You're quite limited in the colour palette. As well with these, you can basically sort of mix and match them, and then you can end up getting some quite nice colours. So I wouldn't say that yellow on top, like the sun bleach, that is probably maybe not 100% prototypical, but I didn't think it looked too bad. It gives it a slightly different look to what you would see maybe elsewhere. The rest of the tank has sort of been done with a bit of a mixture of the pastels again, but mainly Winsor & Newton oil paints is what I've used for that. The handrails, that was Winsor & Newton acrylics because I wanted to dry in time. That's what I used on there, so I've used like a yellow. I was a bit umming and ahhing as to whether or not back in the 80s they would be yellow, because some of the railings were white, some were black, some were blue. There's all sorts of different colours. I think the yellow stands out a little bit more, but it's quite well blended as well, so it's not like it's not an in-your-face yellow. I think that's work. Spillage down the side of the tank. I think that pipe on the top is probably a breather pipe, but again, just to perhaps slightly over accentuate it, but you know, you might have got something coming up and down there at some point, so I decided to make a bit of a deeper streak there. As for the rest of the roof, it's all pretty clean. And then the only other place where I sort of added quite a lot of dirt was kind of where the steps are, so I thought you'd get quite a lot of rust running off the steps and bits and pieces, so that's why I sort of concentrated on them. And also the other thing to try and do was to add sort of like some shadows. But I like the way the steps twist around and sort of go up. I think that's really good. So that's like my tank. Of course, my next quandary is whether or not that's too big. I suppose the backstory for this is that this depot was once a really big depot serving most of the DMU fleet from the Midlands that had come here for sort of light servicing and refuelling. Nothing too major would have happened here at any time, but so the size of the tank would have been bigger. Obviously now it's just merely a two-road light servicing depot with some refuelling that goes on. This tank is probably too big for what I've got now, but then I suppose there's nothing to say that it don't have to be fully filled, and if the tank was serviceable at the time when they decided to reinstate this as a depot, they probably would have just used it anyway. It seemed pointless to take this one down and replace it with something else if this one was perfectly serviceable. That's the backstory. But having said that, Goodwood Scenics have now produced some more tanks that are probably more suitable for a depot. I don't know whether or not to use this tank elsewhere on my fuel intake point, which is beyond the next bit of the layout, it's not built yet, or to leave it here. Maybe if someone's got any suggestions, perhaps to maybe drop them in the box for me just to see. So what are your views on it? Would you keep this tank? Do you think this is a little bit too big for the two-road servicing depot, or do you think that it's perfectly feasible? It is nice and it does make a statement. Obviously it's not finished yet. What I'll do is I will bed it in to either concrete or whether or not to put it in the gravel like what I've got over this side here. I'm not totally sure how to bed it in yet, but like I said, I'm not totally sure if that's the one I want to use. So your thoughts please would be extremely useful. Okay, and I'm going to leave it on this, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you, bye.